you know, if Paddy has said to Rob, look, it's really, really rough, you just can't really row for the first few minutes, then maybe Rob's made that decision just to move it up a bit further and get out of the rough and then have a cleaner race start.
Yeah, so it looks like the crews are going to go from a standing start. They've paddled into flatter water. I mean, it's still pretty lumpy, to be fair, but, you know, they shouldn't get water in the boat in these conditions. We expect the crew on the right, who is Hansel in the white, coxed by the American Savannah Adamo. We expect them to have a little bit of an advantage on the start to compensate for the Middlesex bend. We are starting this Trial 8 race further down the boat race course. How far down is it now that they've gone?
So we are just past Fulham Football Club. So the Middlesex bend is over. We're on straight now, which will take us up towards the Harris Depository and the Surrey bend.
So Hansel, as we've been talking about, coxed by the 22-year-old American Savannah Adamo, and the crew on the left of your picture, well, they're in the light blue undershirts. They're the Zoolander crew, and they are the crew with Joe Travis, Orlando Morley, Tom Marsh, Gus John, the new guy, in the four-seat, Kenny Copeland, rode at Montclair, coxed by Jerry Michaels, and you can see that Hansel has an advantage. Noel, Luca Ferraro in the 7 seats, Martin Amartier, Ed Bracey, the cox. Still pretty difficult, but a clean start from both crews. Yeah,
still water flying around, but I mean, can you imagine how bad that would have been if they'd started at Putney? Both crews off cleanly now. They're going to try and get into their rhythm. I tell you what, it must be really strange having to start down after a bend like that.
Yeah, really strange, isn't it? So the advantage as we go round under Hammersmith Bridge will be to the crew on the left, who are the Zoolander crew. Crews coming very close together there, Henry.
Absolutely, yeah. Crews coming together very early on, but keeping it clean for now. It's going to be up to Zoolander now to put pressure on Hansel. They know that their race needs to be won by the end of the Surrey bend, so they're anticipating a shorter race, whereas Hansel, by contrast, looking to just hold overlap.
If you're just tuned in, you are watching the Cambridge Men's 8 Trial for the 2024 boat race. I'm Martin Cross, and with me, Imogen Grant, double world champion, and Henry Fieldman, Olympic bronze medal cox of the British 8 in Tokyo. And we have started this race about 3 minutes into the course because it is so rough. So they are just off the start now, and you can see by the little rates, that graphic on the bottom left, 34 and 35, they're still quite high.
Absolutely. I've got to say, at the moment, Zoolander, I think they're rowing pretty well right now. They're getting quite nicely stretched out at the back. Blades are pretty clean and direct round the front. I think they're really making that tell.
Zoolander, of course, the crew with Luca Ferraro, the victorious stroke, who can turn his hand to rowing stroke or 7. He's such a multi-talented oarsman, under 23 world champion. And right now, if you had to put money on who's going to win this race, you'd say Zoolander on the left of your picture in the light blue. Got a pretty good advantage over the Hansel crew, stroked by Matt Edge, with the president in, Seb Benjacree, and the Canadian Tom Lynch in the engine room of that boat.
I think you would. In the prep pieces leading up to Trial 8, these crews were really quite evenly matched. So it is still going to be a close race, but I do wonder whether the change in start and not having a true Middlesex advantage has just thrown the Hansel crew on the Middlesex station. Zoolander's they're rowing long. The blades are in the water for a really long time and it's looking pretty neat, whereas I wonder whether Middlesex is actually just still a little bit less sheltered now as they're coming round to Surrey. It looks like they're having a bit more trouble with the water and trying to keep that rowing clean. Yeah, we just saw the drone shot there, which we lost for a second, but you could see there was almost a 3/4 of a length advantage for Amartier and Ferraro's crew on the left-hand side, coxed by Ed Bracey, and he had no hesitation in saying he lost the toss, but I would have chosen Surrey. That's the station he's on. And Ed Bracey, the former Etonian and Harvard man, is taking his crew round the Hammersmith Bend in a strong position at the moment. Well, this is a sharp steer in now. The crews are barely clear of each other, but they're almost line astern once again. That's a tight line that Savannah is taking underneath Hammersmith.
Absolutely. I mean, it was hard to tell from the camera angle we had there, but if you were in Savannah's position, the trailing boat in Hansel, you would basically be wanting to try and almost hit Zoolander, hit that boat. If you can do that, you force a foul and the race is over and you've won. It looks like Zoolander's just got into a safe enough position now, but the crews are quite close.
Well, yeah, the Zoolander crew, as you're saying, they were really long, out forward, so they're reaching round out in front of their riggers. The blades are in the water for a long time. I mean, they do look rowing a slightly different standard to their teammates.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they do look the classier crew right now. What's going on in there, it's only up for us to kind of imagine, but it looks like there's really good leadership all the way down that boat in how we're trying to row and how they want their boat to look and feel. Not ideal from the coach's point of view right now. I'm sure they want it to be a little bit closer, but the race is, we're not even halfway yet, so let's see how this next bend unfolds.
So 4 minutes into this race, just a reminder if you've tuned in that we started this race down the course because it was so rough on the stretch from the start down to the Fulham Football Club. So we are only 4 minutes into this race, that's why the clock says that, but yet we're past Hammersmith Bridge. Normally I guess we'd be about 9 minutes or so, 8-9 minutes into this race, and the trailing crew coxed by the American Savannah Adamo, who is closest to us, the 22-year-old American facing Matt Edge, the victorious blue from this year's race, up in the bows, gone into the stroke seat. Impress Rob Baker, but he's got to do a lot more to impress Rob Baker, I think, in this contest. Somehow drag his crew back into it.
Yeah, at the moment it looks like Zoolander, who started on the Surrey station, is making light work of this. It's always easy to shower compliments on the crew that's out front, but they just look relaxed, they look long, and they've got Hansel in their sights, so they can just stay long, push them away, and Ed's just going to be steering as good a line as he possibly can as they start to approach the AF.
I'm just thinking for those guys in the middle of the Zoolander boat, like Tom Marsh, Gus John, Ken Copeland, I mean, relative newbies. Obviously we've got the two blues, but they're going to be loving this in the engine room of that boat, and they're just out in front looking sweet.
Absolutely. I think in the back of people's minds they'll know that the coaches are watching closely, and the coaches are really looking to see how the athletes react to being in a race as long as this and as intense as this, and it's absolutely going to play a part in selection. So if you're in the leading boat, you're feeling good right now.
And I think, if anything, the Zoolander crew is moving out. Is that something right, or is that gap staying the same?
It looks pretty. Yeah, I think they are moving out a little bit. It's hard to tell from the steering right now, but it looks like Zoolander just moved a little bit towards Middlesex. We're on a straight right now, so I'd expect the crews to just be tracking in a straight line, but perhaps we'll see from a zoomed out shot soon.
So what sort of calls is Savannah going to be making in this crew at the back of the race here, the Zoolander crew? What is she saying at this point?
I think if I was in the trailing crew right now, I would be just trying to keep the belief in the guys. Just make sure that they know it's not over till it's over. This is the gap, and then I would try and just make very achievable goals. Okay, I need a little bit more rhythm in this way. Make this change. Okay, that's better, and then just step on from there. And try and be as quantified and deliberate as possible.
So, it's the Hansel crew. Just correct myself in terms of the crew. Savannah Adamo in the Hansel crew here in white. They were drawn on the Middlesex station at the start of the race. They had a slight advantage because they didn't have their Middlesex bend. I wonder if they had enough of an advantage, if that has anything to do with the positions, or it is just that the Zoolander crew in the light blue is rowing better.
I think it might be a little bit of both, and now that the water's flattened out as well, they're just really able to kind of send this boat on. I mean, Ed's clearly coxed this crew really well to this point so far, and the stern pair of Martin and Luca has been setting up a really fantastic rhythm. For the crew of Hansel trailing behind now, probably by a couple of lengths, it's going to be really difficult to keep that momentum up and keep that motivation there. You don't want to see the heads go down. Sometimes we talk about going into time trial mode when you can't see your opponent, and just really trying to be internal and just keeping on going. You never know when the other crew is going to make a mistake.
So the Hansel crew there with the president, Seb Benzakri, and Tom Lynch, the victorious blue, another victorious blue. They do look a little sweeter on the front end, I think. Maybe the bow pair a little bit wavy, but certainly I think they're rowing more sweetly than they were as they came up to Hammersmith Bridge.
I would agree. I think credit to Hansel and led by Savannah there. They have certainly improved their rowing, even in the disadvantaged position of being probably 2-3 lengths down right now. They are making steps, so they are absolutely not giving up.
So what are you looking at? Is the coach Rob Baker with his assistant Bill Lucas? What are you looking at this point in the race? We're 8 minutes in. We've got another 4 or 5 minutes to go. Barnes Bridge will unfold round the corner. What do the coaches see?
I think they're seeing two really well-drilled 8s here. We've been talking about the slight difference in styles between these crews, but you've got to remember that they're mixed crews. The athletes that will make up the blue boat later on this year are going to be spread across both of these boats, and there might even be athletes in these boats that don't even make a crew later on. There's a couple of people out for injury at the moment, so it's really just about doing what you can with the short project that you have available with Trial 8. So I've only been in these crews for about a week, and it's about building a crew identity, building the calls that they all know together, and knowing as a crew what they're going to try and work on in each part of the race. It looks to me like Zoolander stretched out another half length there. I think they've got this in the bag.
So Barnes Bridge awaits us in the background there. We're looking at the crew Hansel in the white, as we have been for most of this contest, stroked by the 23-year-old Matt Edge, the chemist, PhD from St Catherine's. 84 kilos. He's put on a bit of weight since he rode at a lightweight, which is down at 72.5 kilos. So he's certainly packed on the pounds and the muscle in the stern of that 8, and it's impressed Rob Baker, as we've said in commentary. But he's got a big job to do in the last part of this race.
Yeah, we just saw a look round again from Seb Benzakri, the president in the 5 seat. I always say when you see a look round from someone like that, you know that probably things aren't going to go very well for that crew. There's a bit of desperation creeping in now. They've only got about 4 minutes of the race left, and that's a huge margin to try and overturn. Zoolander really just took a hold of this race from the off and have just been able to stretch out that lead.
Just how frustrating is it to lose a Trial 8's race?
I see you looking at me, Martin. I actually haven't lost a Trial 8's race, so I don't know. But I think it is absolutely. I mean, it's the amount of work that these student athletes put in to get to this level, this standard of rowing, is tremendous. They're balancing a really tough degree and training, in many ways at an international level. So it's such an effort, and then for it to not go your way, I think it's really challenging. They're all very, very professional in how they carry themselves, so they'll lick their wounds and they'll move on from this. But I mean, they're going to be hurting right now.
Yeah, you race to win, don't you? Even if it's against your teammates.
Yeah, I think we were just looking there at the Hansel crew, and we kind of saw the elbow of Sir Matthew Pinsent, the umpire for this race. He hasn't had much to do, has he, the umpire, during this race?
No, it was a bit concerning early on when they first started. They were pretty close, and I think there was one stroke where they might have touched blades under the water, but from this point onwards, as an umpire, this is an easy race to deal with, to just stand back and let the rowing stand for itself.
So it'd be interesting if we do see any looks round. Seb just looked, as I said, Seb Benzakri just looked round to his blade just to see how close that Savannah was going to go on that line.
Yeah, it looks to me like Savannah, and I think she's right to do this, she's taking a risk, she's trying a tighter line. I think, sitting behind Zoolander, it's never going to work. You're never going to come through there. So she's taking a risk and going really tight, and we'll see if that pays off. She's probably hoping that the amount of rainwater coming down is meaning that the stream is pretty slack.
So will the Hansel crew of Taylor, Zoglo, Holy, Connor, Benzakri, Lynch, Beaver, Edge and Adamo come back at all on the leaders?
I mean, this is exciting, isn't it? It looks to me like they have actually made up some distance. When you consider the difference in the path that both of these crews have taken, usually this wouldn't be beneficial at all because the stream is so strong that you really want to be in the centre of it. But I reckon that Savannah's cut off at least 100, 200 metres of distance over this long time. I don't think it's going to be enough by the finish line, but when you're behind by a couple of lengths, you might as well give it a go.
Absolutely, and I think if you just look at the way that that Hansel is rowing right now, it looks to me like that crew really believes that they can still do this. There's a lot of intent there. It's springy, it's light, and I think they've obviously seen what Savannah's done, and I think, you know, in their minds, they're still in this.
So tailwinds, you could see from the Union flag flying on one of the pubs there at Barnes Bridge. It's a nice tailwind condition. Out in front, it's the Zoolander crew: Joe Travis, Orlando Morley, Tom Marsh, Gus John, Kenny Copeland, Noah Muel, Luca Ferraro, Martin Amatier, the Swede in the stroke seat, says, I think a film of his life will be portrayed by Dwayne Johnson, the Hulk, and Ed Bracey, the Cox. And she's coming very tight on that buoy. She's going to have to put the rudder on now, Savannah, isn't she?
Yeah, absolutely. I think whenever you go tight, tight on the bends, you've always got to make sure you're the correct side of the navigation buoys. So I think, you know, it's a bit more challenging in that way. So the line isn't as smooth as it might be. But I agree with Imogen that I think it's worth the risk when you're in the position that they were in.
They have moved back a little bit, haven't they, Imogen?
Yeah, I think that definitely got them distance. It's not going to be enough, but yeah, it looks like Zoolander is going to run away with this one. Joe Travis, Orlando Morley, Tom Marsh, Gus John, Kenny Copeland, Noah Muel, Luca Ferraro, Martin Ametier and Ed Bracey. And this has more of the newbies in it, so it's going to be their first taste of winning in Cambridge colours.
Yes. Was this one of your picks?
No, I'm 0 for 2. But as they cross the line, that's a win for Zoolander.
Slaps on the back there in the middle of the boat. Gus John to Ken Copeland as Hansel crossed the line. It was a relatively close race. Interesting coxing in the final part of that race. Only 15 minutes long. How frustrated are they going to be they didn't do the full course?
I think they'll be reasonably frustrated. As Immo said earlier, it's the one chance that these crews will get to go over the whole course. I think I would have, perhaps if I was in the launch, I would have suggested that we run the race up to UL, but maybe that would be a little bit too much.
Oh, that would certainly be breaking tradition, wouldn't it? I think they did that one year in the Wingfield Sculls when maybe Hammersmith Ridge was closed, but I don't think they've done it in the boat race.
Yeah, goodness. There's a lot of effort that's gone down in these crews today, even though it was only for 15 minutes. They gave it everything.